since the world was struck by this unprecedented crisis, the COVID outbreak. And incidentally, the WHO had declared COVID a global pandemic on 11th March 2020. So we are nearly going to be reaching 2 years since the world has been engulfed by this crisis. And it will be we will be undermining by saying that it has been an unprecedented crisis because it has put forth grave health, social, economic, and livelihood challenges, and the efforts related to the achievement of SDGs worldwide have taken a further setback. So with that, we at Save the Children were very keen to really understand what is the world of India's girls and how it has been impacted by this pandemic. There have been ample evidences, from studies and from experiences from the ground, which shows that how COVID-19 has affected the children currently and also how their futures are going to be impacted adversely. And within the children, I think it is very critical to understand that it is the girls and the most vulnerable girls who've been impacted the most. And in here, I would like to just highlight, a very pertinent finding. So there was a joint analysis by Save the Children and UNICEF in September 2022, which had suggested that the number of children living in multidimensional poverty had soared to approximately 1.2 billion due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we mean by multidimensional poverty is that the children were without access to education, health, housing, nutrition, sanitation, or water. And in 2021, according to UNICEF, an estimated additional 100 million children were projected to have fallen into multidimensional poverty. So one cannot overemphasize the impact of this pandemic in the lives of children, especially the children who are most vulnerable. And in India, the pandemic situation has severely affected the progress which we had made on some of our critical SDGs, with rights of girls being really disproportionately impacted. Even before the pandemic, the rights of girls were being impacted, and the disadvantages which are being faced by girls as compared to boys are stark, especially when it comes to accessing education, sexual and reproductive health, food and nutrition, as well as ensuring menstrual hygiene and dealing with mobility and migration. And girls more than boys, as you would agree, have faced heightened risk of abuse and sexual violence. And they are also at a disadvantage when it comes to socializing and play and facing mental health challenges. So with that, we would want to kind of, highlight that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually caused further damage to this existing inequality, as well as access to basic rights to the girls. One would not undermine the effort which has been taken by the government of India, as well as the civil society organizations and the private sector to mitigate the adverse impact of COVID-19, but definitely a lot more needs to be done. And that is why we feel that there is a need to have adequate evidence to to understand what is the impact of this pandemic on not only on children, but within them, how it has impacted the rights of girls. And also not only to have evidence, but also to ensure that this evidence feeds into, current and future policy and program interventions to address the severe challenges which the girls are facing. And within the girls, I think it's very critical to understand the girls who are in the urban context. So in light of that, and the fact that, we are building up to the International Women's Day, which is on March 8th, Save the Children had decided to organize this virtual event because we want to strengthen the discourse and throw a spotlight on the whole impact of COVID-19 on girls, and more so how we can have actions and solutions to be able to address this adverse impact. We will also use this occasion to not only share the findings and release our report, which is WINGS 2022, but we would want to have, we would want to initiate a discourse and also provide a platform for the young girls to share their voices, and more so in terms of their solutions. So with that, I would once again want to welcome all of you. And just in terms of some housekeeping related events, we would be recording this webinar. It is also being live streamed. And we also have questions for options for questions and answers. So you can use the question answer icon, which is there in your screen, and we will have dedicated time in the end of this event to address some of those questions. So with that, without further ado, I would like to once again welcome all of you. And before we go into a deeper insight on the other relevant components of this event, we would want to start with a short film on Wings 2020. Thank you. Thank you. So that was a short teaser to our Wings 2022, the report, which the full form is World of India's Girls 2022. And it throws a spotlight on adolescent girls amid COVID-19. So I would now call upon my colleague, Bhavna Mangla, who's the Assistant Manager of Research from Save the Children Bal Raksha Bharat, to provide key highlights of the study, which is the basis of our Wings 2022 report. Over to you, Bhavna.
Namrata, we can't hear Bhavna.
Bhavna, you're on mute.
No. Can I? Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You are.
Now you are.
Okay, so I was saying that Namrata has already set the context. So I will directly start by focusing on defining the study objectives, which focuses on capturing the immediate effects of pandemic on the rights of adolescent girls living in urban slums. The area of inquiry for the study cut across 4 different themes, the first being adolescent health and nutritional well-being, where we looked on to food and nutrition security, health, access to health, and access to sexual and reproductive health rights, menstrual hygiene. We try to capture how the effect of school closure vis-a-vis the parental support and the external support that girls might have received or not have received, and how that affected the learning continuity. The perception of mothers on the pressure of early marriage during the pandemic, and how the access to play and recreation was restricted vis-a-vis the burden of household chores that were shifted. The special focus of the study was to give a platform to the voices of girls so that they can talk about their experiences, emotions, fears, and challenges in their own words. Just a second. So moving on, the study was conducted in 4 states from 4 different zones, North, East, West, and South. We tried to include the states which had high COVID incidence, namely Delhi, Bihar, Telangana, and Maharashtra. 2 districts were selected from each of these states which had high COVID incidence, again, with a significant proportion of urban slum population, and also scoring low on the vulnerability index. A mixed method approach was used, where a household survey with 192 mothers, approximately 270 mothers from each state were covered. Select questions were also administered on adolescent girls within the age group of 10 to 18 years. We had focus group discussion for adolescent boys, girls, and parents. There were also key informant interviews with stakeholders from governments, local institutions, and committees. The data collection happened in January 21, where we used recall method to understand the impact of COVID, in terms of status of the services, in terms of their challenges, comparing before COVID, during the first lockdown, post lockdown, and overall during pandemic since it has started. So now let me take you through the key findings from the study. The first one being on the health and nutritional well-being of adolescent girls. The study finds that 4 in 5 of urban slum households have suffered from food insufficiency, mainly because of rising food prices, shortages, and even lack of money. And they had to resort to cheaper options, borrowing, reduction in the number of meals, portions. And in the times of food crisis, affording sanitary napkins would obviously take a backseat. And 4 out of 5 mothers reported, their daughters could not get sanitary napkins during the lockdown period. They had to resort to using cloth. They did not have access to health and nutrition services, and only 1 in 5 of the adolescent girls were able to access information on sexual health and reproductive health rights using the digital or the social media platforms. The school closed for a very long time, and only 1 in 3 girls were able to attend the online classes. Mothers indicated, that pandemic has seriously impacted their daughters' learning. They feared that they had forgotten the things that they had learned previously. 2 in 5 mothers also reported that there was limited connection with the school in terms of, classes, in terms of assignments, in terms of administrative or any well-being calls for that matter. And 50% of the mothers shared that daughters did not even have coursebook to start their studies at home. India made a progress in reducing child marriage over the years, which we could see gradually, from NFHS 3 to NFHS 4 and even in NFHS 5. But we fear that this could have gotten reversed because of the pandemic. 1 in 7 mothers felt that pandemic has increased the risk of early marriage among girls. 50% of these mothers perceive that, a girl getting married at a younger age is more probable than the counterparts, that is the boys. There has been dearth of awareness building activities around the issue of child marriage during this pandemic times. The quote from the father from Bihar clearly indicates the deep-rooted gender social norms, where they do not want to give mobile phones to their daughters, where the whole education during this pandemic was restricted to. There was a shrinking in the places for play and recreation. We faced a limited social space owing to the lockdown or the social distancing protocols. But how it was different for girls. 9 out of 10 mothers perceive that play and recreation is extremely important for girls, but then 50% of mothers shared that their daughters were not able to indulge in any outdoor play and recreation activities during the time. But why? Because they were engaged in household chores. They were not allowed to, they were told, if you're not able to go to school, you cannot play. You have to, support your mother in the household work. And how candidly the boys share that it was very difficult for us when we have to stay at home and we cannot meet friends and we cannot play, while it was pretty normal for the girls who engaged in household work and they were just learning to cook new dishes. When girls were asked, what is it that you miss from pre-pandemic days when you used to go to the school? They said they missed the time when they used to come together and go together to schools together. They missed the recess time, the games period, where they really connected with their peers. These are some of the voices of the girls which is highlighting their pain, which is highlighting the challenges that they've gone through, which they say that, the pandemic has been a time of grief and pain. There were constant quarrels within the household because their parents have lost their jobs and there was an uneasy situation without the money, which made them worried about their future. There were restrictions and even humiliating comments if they, move outside from their home. They were not able to concentrate on their studies well. There was an environment of frustration. They felt sick and became weak. And how different it was from their brothers, because their brothers' agony was that they were not able to get their favorite food items, or they were not able to pursue their hobbies, while they had problem in accessing sanitary napkins. So that's how it was different for girls. Now let us focus on some of the key recommendations which are crucial to address the challenges that the girls have faced during the pandemic. The first one being an equitable coverage of healthcare services with special focus on adolescent-specific programs, which includes iron folic acid tablets, menstrual hygiene, and other health services. We have to ensure the food security by continuing the existing social protection schemes, especially for the most marginal households. There has to be ensured safe back to school for girls, ensuring that there is a gender responsive plan. We have wash facilities, and also a special emphasis on the psychosocial well-being support that is required for the girls. To address the issue of child marriage, it is important that we support the girl through building their skills and agency. There is a need for a community-based monitoring system so that awareness is built at the ground level, and the decentralization of the whole process can strengthen the law enforcement agencies as well. With respect to play and recreation, it is important that we create new safe spaces for children, especially girls, because normally we see parks overcrowded with boys playing with limited participation from girls. The promotion of active behaviors, we need encouragement from teachers and parents so that girls can actively participate in sports and other recreation activities. Some other key recommendations from the findings were regarding scaling up of investments on girl child, so through gender responsive budgeting. We need to engage multi-stakeholders so that we can address the issue of violation of child rights together, especially focusing on girls. Girls need to participate in the development process. There is a need to have a dialogue and a regular interaction with them to capture their perceptions, their opinions on the same. There is a need to build the agency of the girls so that they can empower their life choices. And this could only be provided when we provide them opportunities, platforms, collaborations, and partnerships. There is a need to strengthen the delivery system to ensure effective implementation of the programs which are focusing especially on girls, and this requires skilled workforce. Again, community-based monitoring system would ensure engagement of communities and committees at the ground level, at the decentralized level. We need to provide support to the existing infrastructure and institution of frontline workers in terms of budgets, capacities, and even incentives to go that extra mile to break that stereotypes causing those, the social and the gender norms that prevail in the society. And lastly, there is a need to generate evidence on how COVID has impacted the rights of girl child, and then we can only address these issues through, proper program and policies, correction measures. Some of the asks from the ground, the mothers are requesting for more teaching time or scholarships. Girls are asking for providing extra classes. They are also requiring sports equipment, safe places, and a conducive and enabling environment for girls to play and grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. And time prevented us from going into too much of details of the findings, but this is just a teaser for you to please go and read the full report post the formal launch of the report. So thanks a lot, Bhavna. And, picking up on one of the important recommendation of the findings and what we at Save the Children truly believe, that we need to listen to the voice of girls because they are the ones who know what's best for them, and also include them in providing solutions. So being true to the spirit of, recognizing the agency and voice of girls, we would now want to call upon Yashoda Pandey, who is a strong girl champion, girl leader, and we would want to hear her story of overcoming the challenges during the pandemic. So, Yashoda.
Dr. Namrata, Yashoda hasn't been able to join as yet.
Okay, great. So we will hold on to hearing the voice of Yashoda, because that is the center of not only the discourse but also of the action. So what we would do is, when Yashoda joins in, we will provide the platform to her. But so then I move on to understanding the centrality of girls' agenda in our work as Save the Children. Because for us, Wings report is just not the only relevant contribution to the discourse and action on children, but Save the Children is committed to having girls' agenda as a centrality of our work. So for that, I would want to invite Mr. Deepak Kapoor, who's the chairperson of Save the Children India Bal Raksha Bharat, and he is also a member of the board of Save the Children International. So over to you, Deepak, for you to throw some highlights on how we at Save the Children are really looking at this whole component of girls and their agencies and their voice. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Namrata. I would have actually preferred to come after Yashoda has shared her experiences, but we will carry on. Well, good morning, friends, and thank you for joining us this morning to shine a spotlight on the adolescent girls amid COVID-19 and releasing the third edition of World of India Girls Report, which, as Namrata said, we call it the Wings 2022, and to collectively reinforce our commitment to every last child, which is our purpose. Well, the IMF, World Bank, and the OECD have mentioned that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic will increase poverty and widen inequality in countries across the board. And COVID-19 has threatened children's rights, both boys and girls, across the world, including India. And of course, has caused severe disruption to their healthcare, protection, education, and overall well-being, including, and that's important, including their social interactions. And the adverse impact of the pandemic has actually disproportionately impacted the most vulnerable and marginalized girls, especially the adolescent ones. And we all recognize that the adolescent years are a critical transition period, a time when children learn to navigate social, economic, and gender variables and make choices that set the foundations for their adult lives. Adolescent girls and young women, they face economic, education, health, and social risks, which is not only due to persistent poverty alone, but also due to deep-rooted patriarchal and harmful social and gender-biased norms. The pandemic has only further aggravated this existing inequality. It is indeed unfortunate that evidence to assess the impact of the pandemic on the rights of adolescent girls is highly inadequate. The Wings 2022 is our effort to bridge this evidence gap and contribute to corrective policy and programmatic action. And we at Save the Children believe in generating evidence on critical issues of child rights and then use that evidence to influence policy and program interventions. And one such commitment, of course, is and has been to provide platform to issues and voices of girls in the form of evidence-based flagship report called Wings, as Namrata explained a little while ago. And this, friends, I must point out, has been a continuing effort Wings 2014 focused on status of rights of adolescent girls through secondary literature review. Wings 2018 further deep dived into perception on girls' safety in public spaces. And now Wings 2022 is our attempt to highlight the concerns and issues of adolescent girls amid the pandemic vis-a-vis their access to child rights. And the key findings, as Bhavna explained in this report, they highlight the need for urgent attention of policymakers and stakeholders to the critical agenda of girls and their rights amid COVID-19. And we know that while state and national governments have social protection programs and policies in place for the well-being of adolescent girls, a lot more is desired for these initiatives to effectively achieve their objectives. The recommendations provided in the report will be a step forward to ensure the same, and we sincerely hope that. Well, friends, for us at Save the Children, working with adolescent girls from vulnerable families is and will remain an integral focus of our work. For us, girls influencing decisions which affect their lives and consequent programs and policies has always been a high priority. We will continue to support vulnerable adolescent girls in deepening their capacities and also engage with parents, boys and young men, communities, and governance structures to ensure enabling a social as well as a policy environment for the girls to thrive and lead dignified lives. We sincerely hope that this report will be widely used by all stakeholders and influence policy and programs leading to a catalytic change in making India an equal and a better place for our girls. Thank you once again for joining us today. Thank you. Over to you, Namrata.
Thank you so much, Deepak, and thank you so much for re-emphasizing the whole component of our commitment to the girls' agenda. And with that, we are set to formally release, virtually release the report. I wish we could have done it in person, but that is the reality of COVID-19, and everyone, all of us have, got used to the virtual reality. So with that, please join us in the virtual release of the report, and I'd request Pulkit to kindly release the report, and so that all of us can join in the release together. Thank you so much. So this is, we have virtually released the report, and the report will be now, available to all of you. So we have a virtual link on our website. So please go on to the Save the Children website, and you can access the virtual version, the e-version of the report, and go into more details in terms of what we have been able to only throw, a spotlight, but not really gone into too much of detail. But the report has much more intensive and deeper analysis of the realities of girls, as well as more in terms of forward-looking solutions and recommendations. So with that, we still do not have Yashoda. She is facing problems in terms of internet access, and I think what better than to show the challenges the girls have been facing within the COVID context, and the challenges will continue. But we are really trying to ensure that we can have her join us, till the program is running. We would now request our CEO, Save the Children, Mr. Sudarshan Suchi, to share his insights on, the rights and agencies of girls, and how it is critical to have them, leading the discourse as well as the action as we talk about, providing an empowering future for the girls of India and the world. Over to you, Sudarshan.
Thank you. Morning, Deepak, Shiv Kumarji, Stuti ji, and all others. And Namrata and team, Madhura, Namrata, Pragya, congrats for releasing the report. I think if your face shows that releasing the report is a end in itself, I'm sorry to bring you the bad news. You've just created loads of work for yourself and for everybody around you. Because I think the idea of Save the Children is to look at reports as a starting point of an action to do agenda more than and a to do which will define our being and our context. More on the report a little later. First, purely from a personal experience, I want to narrate why what is there in the report and what is not there but indicated in the report resonates with me. Story of two girls, names and places slightly changed but very real. 10 years ago, somewhere in Madhya Pradesh, Archana and Ranjana, two sisters. Ranjana then was 16 and Archana 14, part of a Gond tribal village, central Madhya Pradesh, part of a family where there was a brother, Arvind. Parents were marginal farmers and making a hand to mouth living. They were in the village school, and I and my wife, it was our first kind of a familiarity with that area, the families and everything. And just to familiarize ourselves more, we had gone to school, interacting and getting to know children, and we did a lot of activities. Two of the most outstanding and brilliant children, the most actually in certain ways, were Ranjana and Archana. And we felt very strongly that we want to back them up in whatever aspirations they have in life, and promised that their education shall be supported by us. And it was an immediate response, enthusiasm and a context. While we started backing up with the fees books, 6 months later, when we went to the village again, we found neither of them were in school. They had discontinued education. And what I learned was they were filling in for their parents who were agriculture labor people. They were filling in for them to do Narega job, falsifying the identity and adding, augmenting those wages, and had dropped out of school. And I mean, typical reaction for me was being very upset and feeling angry, and that they were ungrateful. They were being supported or offered support, and yet they dropped out. What I learned is that that family, to keep itself going, was looking at this to augment income, and they saw that the one way to support the most important member of the family to continue studying and growing, the deserving one and the entitled one, was the son Arvind. And to do that, they needed some people to shoulder more work and this thing. That was Ranjana and Archana. And whatever we could do could not convince them. We also realized that our response was typically looking at a silo of education and continuity, not the whole life around those two girls, as to what else would take them to continue being educated. It wasn't about paying their fees or buying their books. It was a much larger context in that ecosystem than just that. This was 2009-10. 2013, 12-13, Ranjana at 18 by then got married. And since it was cheaper to do marriages by the twos and dozens, the younger one was also married at the same time. She would have been around 14. 2017-18 and 2009-10, when we first met them, they were not just the looked brightest, but they were the most energetic and enthusiastic and hopeful children, chirpy. Cut to 2017-18, the elder one had two children, had an abusive husband, and both the elder and the younger one looked at least 10-15 years older than they were, listless, and just continuing doing what they were told or doing the agriculture labor and believing within that what is the best they could do. This was a girl who was talking at that time when she was in class 8 about being a doctor, engineer, that collector, actually. Collector was her aspiration. And why I'm narrating this is Wings is not really a data. I mean, we did get from Bhavna data, but this is about real people. And at 75, we just, we've been hearing the Amrit Mahotsav everywhere and 75 years. I mean, I really feel what meaning independence has if 40% of our population, I mean, and we claim to be a thriving democracy, 40% of our population, agar wo abhi bhi they don't, and Ranjana and Archana are that 40%, by the way, were. We could not guarantee them their basic requirement. And when I say we, it's not the state, all the adults collectively, the state, the civil service organizations, the corporates, the parents, the local ecosystem, whoever, whatever it takes. Save the Children, I've often heard we use a phrase called every last child. So Ranjana and Archana were two of them. I personally missed the bus there. And I think we should worry how many Ranjanas, Archanas will keep, missing the bus because we couldn't collectively look at investments and secure their future and actually through them, our future. I think Wings, if we look at the last 3 reports, I mean, personally, I would have wished, why can't we get Wings every 2 years to shake us up? But I guess the effort it puts in. So even in 4 years, it has offered us a space that with the COVID, with the technology, a new iniquity, a new load has been thrust on them, as a whammy over and above all the pandemic related whammies, where they are further pushed back from wherever they are. They are on a treadmill where if they don't move fast enough, they fall off the grid. So I think what we are talking about is collective action about solutions for every last child. And what I'm very kind of confident about is SAVE is now consciously moving towards this idea of agency or voice of children by instead of just being us mouthing. I mean, when we come with the next Wings, even from this one, you will see us actually speaking less for and more of the children speaking for themselves as a testimonial to our commitment around the agency and voices of children. 40% youth, out of 40%, 55% these girls, and therefore the most vulnerable among the vulnerable. We want them to be counted. We want their reality to be counted. And I'm just hoping that all of us feel equally agitated and restless that we haven't been able to do enough. But at the same time, I would say the choice between despondence and hope is Wings has brought this opportunity to us, and I think it has offered us an agenda and a way forward, which is listed in the report on all the frontiers, whether it's health, nutrition, education, and underlying all that protection. Collective action is what we are being invited for, and the time is now, and the voice and the agency is theirs, but ours to do, and a more holistic approach. So I am really very proud and honored that I'm a part of this entire process of bringing this agenda to top of everybody, discomforting all of us. I'm drawing a comfort in our discomfort. So my team, best wishes to all of us and all the others who joined us. Thank you for joining, and please do take this discomfort back to all those places where you come from and tell us what we could be doing going further. Thank you. Thanks, Namrata and everybody.
Thank you so much, Sudarshan, and thank you also for highlighting that Wings. Our journey doesn't end with Wings, and instead, it is our commitment to actually take it forward. So thanks for creating that bit of a discomfort. It is important. And, I'm happy to also let you all know that we have Yashoda back with us. So she's been able to join. And can you imagine, for a minute, what if she had not been able to join? Understand the reality that, because of the so-called digital divide, the components we talked about, in the report, and thing which was demonstrated right here, what if she had not been able to join? अगर यशोदा हमारे साथ अभी नहीं हो पाती, हम उनकी आवाज और उनकी जैसी कितनी लड़कियां हैं जिनकी आवाज हम सुन नहीं पाते और सुन नहीं पा रहे हैं. तो वो चैलेंज और वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट समझना बहुत बहुत जरूरी है. एंड इट इज स्टिल नॉट ओवर. People may think that COVID, we have come out of the cycle of COVID, but the challenges still remain and we are still not there. The crisis is still there. So with that, I want to welcome Yashoda. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है यशोदा. हम थोड़ा सा घबरा गए थे कि आप ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाओगे, but I'm so glad कि आप यहाँ हमारे साथ हैं. और I will just take 2 minutes to introduce यशोदा because उनकी एक जर्नी बहुत ही इंस्पायरिंग रही है. तो यशोदा एक यूनाइटेड नेशंस वॉलंटियर 2020 अवॉर्डी है. And she's from Odisha, and she started her volunteering journey after the election as the president of the block level Ananya's Girls Federation. And she's always dreamt of becoming a leader despite all odds. And she used to take life skill sessions among adolescent girls group, along with discussion exercises and games. And she helped build capacity and empowering other adolescent girls around her. And later she was also trained on sexual reproductive health rights. And she has shared that learnings and experiences with other adolescent girls. And her effort has also received praise from Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik's office on the social media. So welcome यशोदा. हम बहुत खुश हैं कि आप आज हमारे साथ ज्वाइन कर पाए. तो हम आपसे थोड़ा सा आपकी आवाज में और आपके अनुभव से थोड़ा सा समझना चाहेंगे कि कोविड-19 के दौरान जो अभी भी हम लोग जिस स्थिति को अभी भी हम लोग जिससे गुजर रहे हैं, आपने और आपकी जैसी कई सारी लड़कियों ने किस तरह की चुनौतियों का सामना करा. वो क्या क्या चैलेंजेस थे, क्या क्या चुनौतियां थी जिनका आपको सामना करना पड़ा और आपने उनका सामना कैसे करा. तो वो दोनों चीजें अगर आप संक्षिप्त में हमें बताएंगे तो हम आपकी जुबानी आपकी कहानी सुनना चाहते हैं. ओवर टू यू यशोदा.
थैंक यू मैम. सबसे माफी चाहती हूँ क्योंकि मेरा एरिया एक पहाड़ी एरिया है, उसकी वजह से नेटवर्क बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम है. इसीलिए मैं घर के पीछे तरफ आई और घर में नेट कम के वजह से ज्वाइंट हो नहीं पा रही थी. तो जो भी हो मैं ज्वाइंट हो पाई, इसलिए बहुत अच्छा लगा. मेरा नाम यशोदा पांडे है. मैं उड़ीसा के नुआपड़ा जिले के एक हल्दी गांव से हूँ और मैं अनन्या गर्ल फेडरेशन नुआपड़ा ब्लॉक की प्रेसिडेंट हूँ तथा अपने जीपी लेवल के झांसी रानी गर्ल फेडरेशन की प्रेसिडेंट हूँ और 2020 का मैं यूएनवी अवार्डी रही हूँ. तो आज का इस लंच जो हमारा प्रोग्राम है उसमें आज मैं खुद को गर्व महसूस करती हूँ कि मैं आज हमारे इंडिया के लड़कियों को रिप्रेजेंट कर रही हूँ. तो मैं सौभाग्यशाली समझती हूँ खुद को जो मुझे चुने और मैं आज कुछ बोल पा रही हूँ. तो जैसे मैं हमारे इस कोविड पेंडेमिक समय में बहुत असुविधाएं हुई हैं, तो हम पहले देखें कि हमारे एरिया में बहुत सारे इश्यूज हम तो देखते आ रहे थे, लेकिन हम कुछ एक्शन कुछ नहीं ले पाते थे, तो बहुत दुख लगता था. तो जब हमने सेव द चिल्ड्रन के जरिए हमने लाइफ स्किल एजुकेशन तालीम लिए, जिसमें हमने सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस के रूप में खुद को एक निकाले और फिर हमने SRHR का जो ट्रेनिंग है उससे भी हमने अपने आप में कुछ बदलाव के रूप में पाया, जिससे कि हमने जब कभी हमने अपने एरिया में लड़कियों की चाइल्ड मैरिज बहुत होते थे और उनकी शिक्षा के ओर प्रभाव पड़ते थे और उसके जो मासिक पीरियड के दिनों में उनको सैनिटरी नैपकिन ये सारे इशू होते हैं. जैसे कि मैं रोकने जाती तो बहुत गालियां देते थे. जैसे मैं बाल विवाह की बात करूं, चाइल्ड मैरिज की बात, तो अपने एरिया में पहले लोग बहुत गालियां देते थे और कोई सपोर्ट भी नहीं करते थे. तो ऐसा लगता था कि हम डर तो लगता था, लेकिन हम पीछे नहीं हटे और फिर हम कैसे करें तो हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं ये सोच में रखे और हम लड़कियों का एक फेडरेशन बना लिए. फेडरेशन के साथ हम लड़कियों का तो ग्रुप बन गया और हम लड़की अगर काम करेंगे तो फिर और अलग कोई आवाज ना उठाए, इसलिए हमने हमारे उड़ीसा में तो नहीं थे VCPC कमेटी, तो हम नयापाड़ा में पहली बार हमने अपने एरिया से शुरुआत की। VCPC जो विलेज चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन कमेटी है, उसमें हमने मेल पर्सन को लिए, जो बुजुर्ग लोग हैं हमारे उनको लिए, महिलाओं को लिए, लड़के लड़कियों को लिए, और आशा आंगनबाड़ी और वार्ड मेंबर, सरपंच समिति, ऐसे सभी लोगों को लेके हमने VCPC कमेटी बनाए। और उनके साथ हमने मिलके अपने गांव में जो इश्यूज होते हैं उनके बारे में हमेशा चर्चा किए कि ये सारे इशू हो रहे हैं, तो हम कैसे इनको हम दूर कर सकते हैं। तो इसने हमें सभी लोगों के सपोर्ट में थोड़ा-थोड़ा आया, तो हम लोगों को अवेयरनेस करते हुए, लोगों को रैली करते हुए चाइल्ड मैरेज को प्रोटेक्शन धीरे-धीरे कर रहे हैं, और किए भी हैं, कितने बाल विवाह रोके हैं। और मैं दूसरी बात ये बोलूँ कि जैसे हमारा गर्ल्स एजुकेशन को लेके सबसे बड़ा इशू है। जैसे अपने गाँव एरिया में क्या होता है, लड़की लोग बहुत डर जाते हैं। प्राइमरी स्कूल तक तो उसका क्लास होता है, लेकिन वो लोग स्कूल दूर होने की वजह से हाई स्कूल, कॉलेज उनका पढ़ाई रुक जाता है। तो इसकी वजह से भी चाइल्ड मैरेज होते हैं। लेकिन इस सारे चीज़ में हमने काम किया, तो हमने लड़कियों को जो जिनका पढ़ाई रुक गया था, उनको हमने पढ़ाई स्कूल में नाम दाखिला किए, कॉलेज में नाम दाखिला किए, और उनके माता-पिता से भी बात किए कि लड़के हो या लड़की हो, दोनों को पढ़ाना बहुत ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि वो हमारे देश के भविष्य हैं। तो वो एक था हमारा चैलेंजेस, उसमें भी हमने उसके भी समाधान में हमने सफलता हासिल की। फिर जैसे हमारा लड़कियों का मासिक पीरियड के दिनों में उनको सैनिटरी नैपकिन की ज़रूरत जो होती है, लड़की जो इन सैनिटरी नैपकिन के बारे में ही खुलकर बात करने में डरती थी, शर्माती थी, कोई बात नहीं करते थे। तो जैसे कि हमने फेडरेशन बनाया, कमेटी बनाया, तो उसमें हमेशा हम बैठक किए लड़कियों को लेकर ही। तो 10 से 19 साल की लड़कियों को लिए, तो हमने वहाँ पे उनको सारे बातों चर्चा किए, और हम लोग ये सैनिटरी नैपकिन का यूज़ लड़कियों के लिए सेफ्टी है, ये सब कुछ उनके बारे में, उसके हेल्थ हाइजीन के बारे में बताए। फिर जैसे कि हमने किसी लड़की के पास सैनिटरी नैपकिन तो नहीं था, तो हमने सोचे लड़की लोग फेडरेशन के माध्यम से हमने CDMO को लेटर किए कि हमारे सभी लड़कियों को सैनिटरी नैपकिन उपयुक्त हो। तो लेटर करते हुए हमने हमारे CDMO से हमने वो हमारे सभी लड़कियों को के पास पहुँचा सैनिटरी नैपकिन। हर कोने में गया कि कोई भी लड़की सैनिटरी नैपकिन से वंचित ना हो, लेकिन हमारा जो कोविड पैंडेमिक सब खराब कर दिया, उसकी वजह से रुक गया हमारा जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो रहा था, वो किसी लड़की के पास पहुँच नहीं पाया। जैसे कि हमने कोविड टाइम में बहुत सारे परेशानियाँ झेली, हर लड़की कोई घर से नहीं निकले, फिर सोशल डिस्टेंस का मेंटेन करना, फिर मास्क यूज़ करना, ये सारी चीज़ों को देखते हुए हमने मास्क भी बनाकर डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किए, और यहाँ सोशल डिस्टेंस का और सैनिटाइज़र यूज़ के बारे में बताए। तो इन सारी चीज़ों को देखते हुए हमने सैनिटरी नैपकिन कैसे लड़कियों को उपलब्ध हो, इसलिए हमने NM के पास उन सारी लड़कियों का लिस्ट लेकर गए, और उनसे लेकर हमने सभी लड़कियों को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किए। और उसमें फिर जब धीरे-धीरे कोविड पैंडेमिक खत्म हुआ, तो फिर से हमारा लड़कियों के पास जो सैनिटरी नैपकिन है, वो उपलब्ध हो पा रही है। और जैसे मैं बात करूँ हमारे हाँ, देश की लड़कियों का भविष्य यही होना चाहिए कि हम हमेशा लड़के या लड़की का बराबर नहीं करना चाहिए। हमारा सोच ये होता है कि हम लड़के और लड़की में अगर रिस्पेक्ट कर देंगे, हम कभी किसी को नीचा ना दिखाएँ, और जो लड़के कर सकते हैं, वो हम लड़की भी कर सकते हैं, लेकिन हमें कभी भी उनको कॉम्पिटिशन के नज़रिए से नहीं लेना है। और हमें हमेशा वो जैसे करते हैं, वो हमारे ऊपर जो क्षमता है, जो हम कर सकते हैं, वो हमारे ऊपर वो जो हिम्मत है, अगर वो हम सोच कर अगर काम करेंगे, तो हम उसमें 100% सक्सेस हो जाएँगे। और जो हमारा मैं एक एग्ज़ाम्पल लूँ, तो जैसे हमारे कॉइन्स होते हैं, हेड और टेल 2 पार्ट्स होते हैं, वो अगर नहीं होने से एक कॉइन्स की वैल्यू कुछ नहीं होता। उसी प्रकार मेल और फीमेल जैसे लड़के-लड़कियों के बिना हमारा सृष्टि प्रकृति का संभव है, तो दोनों का पार्ट बहुत इक्वल होता है। और जब लड़की माँ बनकर बच्चा पैदा करती है, लेकिन एक लड़का परिवार पोषण करता है, और साथ में ये हमें हमेशा समानता नज़र से हमें देखना होगा, और हमेशा एक-दूसरे को रिस्पेक्ट देना होगा। बस लड़के-लड़की नहीं, अलग जेंडर को भी हमें रिस्पेक्ट देना होगा, और हमें एक ऐसा एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करना होगा जिसमें हम हमारे अ कम्युनिटी में एक ऐसा परिचय बनाना होगा कि कहें कि कुछ कर सकती है लड़की या कुछ आगे बढ़ने में उनका सपोर्ट करें। और जैसे लड़कियों को कोई मौका ही नहीं मिलता कुछ काम करने के लिए, अगर वो मौका मिल जाए कि ये लड़की कुछ करे और देश का नाम रोशन करे या अपने सबसे पहले बात तो अपनी माँ-बाप का नाम रोशन करे, ये सारी चीज़ होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। तो सभी लड़की को मौका तो मिलना ही चाहिए और कभी भी लड़के को कभी कॉम्पिटिशन के नज़रिए से नहीं, उनको नीचा दिखाने से नहीं, हर लड़के-लड़कियाँ एक जैसे काम करेंगे, तभी जाके हम एक अच्छे हमारा जो सपना है, जो हमारा क्षमता है, जो हम कर दिखाने की सोच रखते हैं, उसमें हम बहुत आसानी से हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। जैसे मैं अपने ही एग्ज़ाम्पल लूँ जैसे मुझे पहले तो रोक-टोक यानी कि कोई सपोर्टिंग नहीं था, लेकिन मैं धीरे-धीरे करते-करते जैसे जीपी लेवल से ब्लॉक लेवल, डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल, स्टेट लेवल से मैं इंटरनेशनल लेवल तक भी पहुँची। यही मेरी सबसे बड़ी बदलाव है। और जैसे हमारी शालिनी साहू, दीपांजलि साहू ये सारे जो लड़कियाँ हैं और जुलीमा मलिक ये हमारे क्षेत्र के जो लड़कियाँ हैं, ये सभी जो अपने ऊपर जो कम्युनिटी के ऊपर जो वो हौसला रखी थी, उसमें वो बुलंद हुई और मैं भी आज खुद को एक बुलंद के हिसाब में चुनी गई हूँ। तो मैं चाहती हूँ जो मैं काम करती हूँ, हम लड़कियाँ काम करते हैं, वो हम हर लड़कियाँ मिलकर काम करें, हर पुरुष भी इसमें शामिल हो, हर महिला भी इसमें शामिल हो और आगे अगर ऐसे ही काम करते रहेंगे तो हमेशा हम लड़कियों हों या लड़के हों, कभी भी हम किसी को नीचा नहीं दिखा पाएँगे और हम अपने हिसाब से एक परिचय सृष्टि कर पाएँगे। तो मैं बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद करती हूँ जो मुझे आज इतने ही समय मेरे बात सुनने के लिए आज मुझे कुछ मौका दिए, मैं कुछ लड़कियों के लिए कुछ बोल पाई। इसीलिए बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद और यही कहती हूँ हमेशा, हर लड़के-लड़कियों को सपोर्टिंग की बहुत ज़रूरी है, उसको मौका मिलने की ज़रूरी है और ऐसे-ऐसे प्लेटफ़ॉर्म की ज़रूरी है उनसे उनका हौसला बढ़ने के लिए। सभी को बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू सो मच यशोदा। आपने तो बहुत ही सुंदर तरह से पूरी अपनी जो जर्नी है कोविड के टाइम की मुश्किलों, कैसे आपने क्या-क्या मुश्किलें का सामना करा और कैसे करा, और जो आपका जो भविष्य के बारे में जो आपका विचार है कि लड़के लड़कियों की समानता की जो आप बात कर रहे हैं, जो सपोर्ट की बात कर रहे हैं, थैंक यू सो मच। और आपकी आवाज इस प्लेटफॉर्म से बहुत दूर तक जा रही है और जाएगी। सो आप जैसे इंस्पिरेशन लीडर्स की भारत को और वर्ल्ड को बहुत बहुत जरूरत है, स्पेशली आज के दिन में। सो थैंक यू सो मच यशोदा, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद एंड थैंक यू फॉर इंस्पायरिंग अस. And moving on from there, we would now want to invite Professor A.K. Shivkumar, who's a development economist and he's a policy advisor, and he works on issues of human development, poverty, health, nutrition, and basic education, and the rights of women and children. And he also teaches economics and public policy as a visiting faculty member at universities in India and abroad. So Professor Shivkumar, he's been associated with the Wings 2020. He's been providing technical support to us for the report. Why we wanted to hear from him was, there's been a lot of conversation around the whole emphasis on the impact of COVID-19 on girls, and also on this whole element of generating evidence and using evidence for policy and programs. So Professor Shivkumar, we would want to kind of understand from you that what next, so we have a report, we've got these evidences, we've got voices. So what next now? What are the policy and program implications? Would you want to throw some lights from where you are? Because you've also been, in this field, and you've been as a policy advisor also to the government of India. So it would be good to hear your insights. What do we take from here, and how do we ensure that the loop is closed and the girls' rights are met? Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Namrata. Let me start by saying, यशोदा, आपने जो बात रखी हमारे सामने वो इतना इंस्पायरिंग था, इतना चैलेंजिंग था, और जिस भावना से आपने बोला कि बॉयज एंड गर्ल्स, फैमिलीज, रिस्पेक्ट फॉर एल्डर्स, वी हैव टू कैरी सोसाइटी, समाज को साथ लेके चलना पड़ेगा, इसमें कोई झगड़ा नहीं करना है, सबको समझा के समाज को साथ ले जाना पड़ेगा। उसी में मेरा होप है कि अगले 5 साल 10 साल में काफी परिवर्तन हो सकता है। तो आप जैसे लीडर्स हैं, इंस्पायरिंग लीडर्स हैं, उसी में हमारी उम्मीद है कि हम लोग एक नया भारत भी देख सकते हैं। सो थैंक यू वेरी वेरी मच। Also want to thank Save the Children for inviting me for the release of the report. I think I'm going to take just 3-4 minutes. After Yashoda, I think nobody should say anything more, but since that was the agenda, I think there's a very significant third wings report against the backdrop of COVID-19, which really highlighted the precariousness in the lives of people. Despite the showing off of the economic growth rates and how well the Indian economy is doing, how we are going to race ahead to become the third largest economy and so on, the reality in the lives of people is that huge amount of precariousness, insecurity, and vulnerability. And we cannot separate what happens to the lives of children from ensuring that families have secure livelihoods. Second is, I think, as I read the report, it's an extraordinarily important report. We are just documenting the effects of COVID and marginally touching on the impacts. I mean, we will not know the impacts of COVID for a long time. And if there is some hints that we are getting, it's only the tip of the iceberg, because there are going to be generational and intergenerational consequences of COVID, which are going to be quite serious, irreversible, and unless we can mitigate the impacts, we won't be able to mitigate the impacts if we don't take actions today. Third is, what I really appreciate about the Wing study is that, adolescence is not a homogeneous group, and we definitely need disaggregated information. And therefore, the focus that Save the Children has given to urban adolescent girls, that is the way to go for all future studies, that you have to narrow down the study to really look at the cultural context and the situation of different categories. And finally, I think the study is situated in the broader framework of looking at the formation of capabilities and the freedoms that young girls have, or the restrictions on the freedoms they enjoy. So I think extraordinarily important contribution. I think all the presentations have highlighted the impact on disrupted schooling, poor educational outcomes, school dropouts, propensity to, or the likelihood of increased child labor, or girls being held back at home to do domestic work, the elevated risks of health, sexual reproductive health, mental health, nutritional insecurity. I think equally important is to flag the escalation in fear and anxiety. It is very unfortunate for young girls and boys to witness and experience violence at home, recognizing that it's a very prevalent phenomenon in a large number of Indian households. The risk of early forced marriages, very early pregnancy. I think this study also brought out the problem of unequal access to information, especially in this digital world, where women do not have the same access to mobile phones or smartphones as men do. And even within the household, I really worry about digital schooling and education, how young girls in particular are going to be able to access this if there's only one cell phone or one smartphone in the house. So I think these are all extremely important, and I think the report does a very good job and a very important job. But like Namrata said, where do we go from here? And I think, and I'm really appealing to Save the Children, a global organization with a fantastic footprint in India, extraordinary reputation of working in the space, of actually bringing the voices of young people to influence policy. And I think one of the features of this report itself is how the voices have enriched the quantitative assessment, because without that balance, like I often say, numbers numb. And that's the function of numbers. You just throw numbers and people just say, oh yeah, 80%, 80%, oh, 90%, okay, 90%. At this point, everyone is reconciled, because after a point, we just don't relate to numbers, but the voices are what are going to make a difference. So let me end by just saying there are 3 or 4 areas, I think, where we can, like Sudarshan said, the work is just beginning. So how do we take this forward? First of all, I think we have to make a very strong case for universal social protection. I think the informality and the precariousness in the lives of most migrant workers and informal sector workers is a very, very difficult situation, and the state needs to do something about it. Equally important, I worry about the role of the state in providing free education and free healthcare. It's almost, when you think of the ideal welfare state, we are in a situation where more than 50% of children are going to private schools. Where is the constitutional guarantee of giving free and compulsory schooling for all children? That seems to have dropped off. Even today, 65% of healthcare is being accessed through the private sector of very dubious quality. So we don't know really. And when you see the commitment of the state in terms of the resources, financial and human resources that they're allocating to even simple things like health and education, shows that there's a lot to be done by agencies and by people who have some influence to advocate with the state government, central governments for increased resource allocations. Third, it also brings me to the role of community-based organizations and NGOs. I think in the ultimate analysis, they are the ones who can really bridge the gap in terms of reaching the unreached, if you want to call that, because with the best of intentions, the state has welfare programs. They can reach some of the poor, but certainly not the poorest. And so it becomes extraordinarily important, and we have to think of very creative modalities, and that's where the private sector also comes in, of seeing what kind of support can be extended to groups like Yashoda's and others who are volunteers to a large extent, but with a little bit of resources can contribute to making large impacts at the community level. The last 2 points, and I'll stop. One is that I would really want to underscore the need to focus on physical and mental health. Both the changes in lifestyle behavior because of the lockdowns in physical activity, the sedentary behavior, as people have often used the word, the quarantine problem is really an issue that one has to worry about in terms of teenagers. In fact, studies have shown that quarantined children and adolescents experience greater psychological distress than non-quarantined children. Worry, helplessness, fear are very common feelings. I can imagine if I were in class 8 or class 9 or class 10 at this point of time, having not gone to 2 years of school, how am I going to progress? What college will I get into? What is a job waiting for me? A very, very serious concern. So really, and this is not easily quantifiable. So I would really urge Save the Children to make this a very important part of the evidence generation that they do. So let me stop by saying congratulations once again. I think the adolescents, again, talking about importance of disaggregation, there are young adolescents in the 10 to 14, and there are late adolescents in the 15 to 18 age group. There is so much to learn and document and bring in the voices of people so that policymakers and everyone in society gets moved by statements that Yashoda makes or her friends make or her colleagues make. And so congratulations once again and all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Shiv Kumar, and thank you for throwing light on this very important critical components and also what are the implications and the next steps. So with that, we would want to close the formal session, and we do have some question and answers. Some have been responded on the chat, and some we've already been able to also respond on the question and answer section. So there were some very active comments also from all the participants. So thank you so much for being active participants. And like we said, there's nothing better than to have a face-to-face interface with all of you who've joined us. But virtual is the reality, and we just hope that the next release we have will be in person. So with that, I would like to call upon Madhura, my colleague, who is the Director of Campaigns and Communication, to give her vote of thanks. Over to you, Madhura. Madhura, you're on mute.
I think you can hear me now. Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Namrata. I have to say the pandemic has touched many lives adversely. Each one of us has had some exposure to it. But I think the young girls in India especially have had, especially from disadvantaged communities, have probably seen the harshest phase of the pandemic today. Many have struggled to reach and even convert really small breakthroughs that can allow them to take charge of their lives, And so it's really, really important, this conversation that we've started today. And it's a start for a hope for change. It's really a start for, sparking a change. And hopefully if we can enable through this conversation the wings really that children and young girls especially need. So today, on behalf of Save the Children, we are also known as Bal Raksha Bharat, I want to share firstly my sincerest gratitude to Yashoda for bearing her life trials really during this pandemic and bringing forth today her earnest views on how she can enable and how girls like her can be enabled, and how they've really been able to navigate this space with difficulty, but they have contributed to this research. So Yashoda, आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. हमारी तरफ से आपकी आवाज हमेशा ऐसे ही बुलंद रहे और कायम रहे, और आप और कई लड़कियों को और कई बच्चों को इनसे इंस्पायर करती रहे. आप हमें भी इंस्पायर करती है. सो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपके लिए. I also want to at this point at this point I also want to actually call upon all the girls and young boys who, like Yashoda, actually have participated absolutely enthusiastically in this research. They've been part of the group discussions. They have put forth many thought-provoking ideas, really, issues for us to really mull upon. So really, thank you. Their contribution has been absolutely most critical for this research. That's really what we're seeing today. And we're launching and celebrating their voices, so that kind of moves that allows us to really start a journey from here. There are many parents also have been very involved. They have taken out time and made sure that they could contribute. There are many communities, especially from Bihar, Delhi, Maharashtra, and Telangana, who have participated in the studies. There have been frontline teams who've been involved. There have been many government officials also and field implementation teams who have really given us inputs really to put together the study. So their insights and the challenges that they shared during these times have been really critical really for this study. So thank you to each one of them. Also today, Mr. Deepak Kapoor and Sudarshan, you have made appeals on behalf of these young girls. You have probably asked us to do more. You've promised as an organization to do more. And actually, you've really shown us, what does it mean to ally up with girls? So thank you for that. Really, it really does ask us to do more, and we commit and promise we will continue on that journey. Dr. Namrata and Bhavna, you've gotten together this concept. You've actually very importantly thought about that we need to share the views of girls in the context of the pandemic. So really important critical voices have come together in this report. So thank you for putting it together. Professor Shivkumar, sir, you have provided us many inputs through the entire journey. Your technical guides have really helped us put this together. You've given us insights on way forward. You've suggested how we can take this ahead. So your contribution absolutely has been invaluable in bringing this report forth, and it will continue to guide us even beyond. So thank you so very, very much. Beyond this, there are so many more who have actually probably tirelessly worked to collate and highlight this report, all behind the scene. So I definitely and specifically want to mention Dr. Sonali, because she's the one who initially started this study and helmed the study and report. So thank you to her. There are many in the state and the hub teams, our frontline teams especially, who have very sensitively and in depth really brought forth these children together, enabled the communities to come and speak. They are the ones who bring forth the voices really to the fore. They are the ones who tell us, okay, there are these various children who are so ready to speak, who are so ready to share, and it comes to a larger platform like this. So thank you to our implementation team in every state, hub, and district really. Our thematic teams, our advocacy teams, the campaign team, the communication team, all have enriched this process. There have been various insights, timely insights that they have provided, and there has been outreach that they've provided. So thank you for that. Thank you, Anandit and Dr. Namrata and Shantanu, really, because you've led confidently this entire team to bring forth this study. So thank you for that. And before I close really for the day, I want us to remember how crucial the voice of children is. And I want to say that Save the Children is absolutely committed to bring forth and build the agency of children. And in that view, actually, there's also another seminal report that we will at Bal Raksha Bharat bring forth. We are working on it right now. It is called the Track Report, and it stands for the Rights and Agency of Children. It takes ahead the whole inputs and insights we've got from the Wings report. It adds more, and you can look forward to the Track Report being released in December. It really will reflect the hopes and thoughts of all children in India across 12 states, really, as to what they want to do. So thank you, everybody. Thank you all for your questions, your enthusiastic participation, your comments and kudos that you've shared. Especially, I saw a lot of warm comments for Yashoda. So thank you, everyone. It was lovely to have you part of this conversation. Thank you, Namrata. Over to you.
Thank you. And yeah, before we sign off, please log on to www.savethechildren.in and get your own copy of Wings 2022. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.